Welcome to Writer Syndrome, podcast about writing from start to finish. This episode's topic, we're getting into the editing process. I'm Russ Capasso, and sitting across from me, next to me, virtually, is Tim Letney.
Russ, how the hell are you, man?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah, how's the editing going?
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a real lot. Yeah. So we are again. Tim and I are in different spots of our editing process. I'm like in the middle of doing content edits from feedback I got from a professional editor, and Tim is just in the early stages of beta reader feedback, and
the nascent stages.
Just got my feedback.
Thank you for the feedback.
How overwhelmed are you?
Oh, dude, so overwhelmed.
Sorry.
So like, you think when you edit as much as you do to get a beta draft ready, that maybe you're done, or maybe it's just going to be a little bit. And it's just so eye-opening. One, thank you so much for sending such detailed edits, and also fuck you for sending so many edits. No, I really appreciate it. It's just incredibly overwhelming, because you provided, all 400 pages worth of edits and suggestions on punctuation and grammar and content. And then my wife, who is still going through it as well, has provided some grammar edits, but a lot of like content and character suggestions. So just trying to tackle these three very different kinds of feedback and edits, I'm just very overwhelmed and trying to think about a process to get through it without giving up completely. It feels like another roadblock. It feels like another one of those crises of conscience where it's like, dude, I thought I was done, but the mountain continues.
Yeah, that self-doubt starts creeping again. You're like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to myself? Like, do I hate myself? Is this what it is?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to keep poking you for a bit. So because you just got your feedback, and I've gone through the beta, like 2 rounds of beta readers. I've gotten your feedback a long time ago. Right. So I'm curious, how do you feel you're going to approach this? Because we were just talking about this, like you've got obviously a ton of like, line edit stuff, which maybe you didn't ask for, but I threw it in there just to really overwhelm you. And then there's like the content stuff. Like, how do you think you're going to approach this?
So going back just like real quick, because even though this is the first bit of, kind of beta feedback and edits I've gotten, this isn't the first round of edits by any means. I had my first draft, which I was very careful to not edit as I wrote, just so I could have something in the can to refine. Second draft, I kind of did a lot of content edits myself. I cleaned up inconsistencies in plot and character motivations. And then my third draft was grammar edit. It was consistency edit. It was adding color. And then honestly, there's probably a 3.5 draft where I went back and I read the whole thing over again to clean up misspellings, punctuation issues, which I obviously missed a ton based on your feedback. Because I had that moment before I'd sent off, the beta drafts to you and Jill. I paused. I was like, I don't want to send this yet because it's not as clean as it could be. And that's kind of where that 3.5 came from. Lo and behold, I still missed so much stuff. And now, I don't know, I'll tell you, I'm overwhelmed because it really does feel like 2 different kinds of feedback that I can't do at the same time. Yeah. And yet I don't want to go and read the entirety of the book twice. So what I think I'm going to do, and honestly, this is open for debate and maybe we can talk about it, is go through some kind of low-hanging fruit, some wins, like clean up the misspellings, clean up, you and I were talking about dialogue tags and consistency on character said versus said character and whatever the genre expectations are around that. And it seems like there isn't a really clear answer, but that's something I need to solve, right? Where I need to make sure that my approach is consistent. So I want to go through it and get those easy wins. And I say easy, but they're going to be super time consuming. First, because that's like it feels like a different part of my brain that I'm using to kind of clean that stuff up. Whereas the feedback on characters and character dialogue, or maybe this chapter needs another bit, that feels like the creative side of my brain, which I can't effectively edit spelling and commas and then all of a sudden jump into a character's POV and write.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like personally it needs to be two separate passes
Yeah.
to do it effectively. Or because what happened yesterday when I tried to do both, I got super overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was intimidating. And I once again had that like Lear moment of, why am I doing this? I should
Yeah.
I should just stop.
Because you love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's it. So I mean, it's kind of interesting because now I'm thinking, like, we did a whole episode about beta reader and getting that feedback and getting, going through it and organizing yourself for beta readers and expectations. And I'm thinking back to that and having the same feeling when more so after I sent out to like 5 or 6 people that first round. I got feedback rolling in from like 3 or 4 different people. Mm-hmm. And some people called out some, small stuff, and then most people focused on like the bigger things, which was good. But I'm wondering, like, looking back on it, should I have been more forceful in being like, don't even worry about any grammar stuff at all. Like, don't even touch it, because like it's going to be a distraction for me coming to like the next phase that I really need to focus on, which is getting the plot, the story, and the characters correct.
Yeah,
but it's really tough because it's tough because like I was having a hard time. I'd read through something, I'd catch something in yours, and I was like, I want to call this out for him. I got to show it to him,
Yeah.
Just
I'll tell you,
miss it.
I feel conflicted about this because I do think, especially with me being a first-time author, that there's still that imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So I'll say that I'm thankful for the misspellings that you've caught and the grammar issues, because when I go to send it to the next round of beta readers, I'm going to feel less like a charlatan.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, just like with formatting, right? Like, I kind of want to walk the walk. I want it to look like a book. I want it to feel like a book. I don't want it to be like fanfic. No offense to fanfic, but like, I don't know. So personally, I'm grateful for it, even though, yes, those are things that will be caught for a professional editor, but it makes me feel at least more comfortable sharing it in its absolute best form, because I don't want it to be like, oh, look at this schlub playing pretend, playing cosplay or LARPing that they're an author. And once again, that's the insecurity piece, which is a perpetual thing that I think I wrestle with. I would hope a lot of people wrestle with, but I know I certainly do when it comes to creating and sharing the stuff I'm creating. But you're right. I mean, it takes time. Is it worth the time?
Yeah.
Right? Like, just for a feeling of confidence. And I don't know.
I think, I don't know. Like, looking back at like my experience, I would say tackling those low hanging fruit stuff was a great way to get motivated and to get into things. I know maybe your focus should be doing like the big stuff, right? The big sweeping issues, right? You should be fixing those. But I think that's a lot of energy. And if you can see these little comments sitting there, like,
I mean, you're right. Because if you fix those first, I mean, it's going to involve a lot of content creation, probably, if you're going to fix the big issues, which then you're introducing
way more
grammar issues, more spelling issues, more punctuation issues.
Yeah.
So it's like this, it's like a catch-22 where, you're right. It's just, I don't want to jump into the big ones yet. I want some wins, baby.
Well, I mean, I would even look at like, and this is something I remember doing, was the places where I saw that there were like grammar and bullshit. If they were within a content section that I was gonna have to change for big picture, I left it. And I just went through and just did the stuff that was like outside of that purview, or wasn't that I could directly see was attached any major changes I was gonna make. And I was like, let me just fix this up, clean that up. It felt good to kind of clear, hit the little resolve button on Google Docs there and be like, okay, I did something. Yeah. And now I get a little cleaner slate when I come to it the next day. It's like, cool. Now I can look at this from that clutter is out of the way, and now I can focus on like the story stuff. So,
and I'm super task based, right? So you made a lot of edits in Google Docs, and hitting check or resolve feels good. A little dopamine hit. Like it's like I'm actually doing something. But
Yeah, I mean, you are. I mean, you're reviewing
something I could pay somebody a few thousand to do for me.
You still got to do it. That's interesting. I think I like the approach of just tackling those smaller things first, but I don't want to like talk too much about like the beta reader feedback stuff because we did an episode on that, so everyone should go back and listen to it. But like, so we've kind of gone back and forth about this in a few episodes and just in general when we talk. So, I mean, I'm planning on doing like the full round of like professional like edits and stuff, right? Like I've gone through the content edit, which I'm in the middle of now. And then there's like the copy line edit, which I'm going to do in October. And then there's like a proofread. I've got to say, the content edit has been the most, I have no idea what to expect for the copy line edit. But I've got an idea from like sample edits, what I've gotten back. And I'm like, cool, I'm a terrible writer. I've got a lot to learn still. But the content edit, I will say, has been extremely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think it's more so, and I'm curious to see how you feel about this as me being Mr. Spreadsheets and organized, and I've got, conflict and little details outlined in a spreadsheet. How are you feeling coming to the feedback you're getting from me and Jill around content, and how do you feel you're going to approach out of like, plot and story characters? Do you feel like really does that piece feel overwhelming to like actually dive into those and be like, oh, I'm got to fix something here in scene 3? Is that gonna have an impact on scene 45?
Yeah, as a pantser, I am not stressed about that.
Of course not.
Now, come to me after I sit down and start doing it. But it being a genre, it being horror, I don't anticipate cascading effects. If anything, I think I'm kind of shoring up character traits and motivations in a way. I don't think it's going to introduce issues because nobody's changing all that much. So no, I'm not wildly concerned about it. I'm overwhelmed. Yeah. But when it comes to the doing of it, I'm not stressed about it. Really, I'm not. But maybe I should be.
Is there any stuff that you're seeing from our feedback, looking back, you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe if I had pants a little less.
Yeah.
Or no, I mean, like, I'm not trying to push.
You're right.
I'm not trying to push my agenda.
No, because there's times, right, that both you and Jill have come across some character moments, and both of you, it's been different parts, but you're like, why are the characters acting like this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's a simple solution. It's because I needed them to get to the next place. Or it's because I wrote that part first, and then I wrote the other part second, even though it comes after it. And now their personality or like the way they're acting doesn't line up with
what they just did before,
the trauma that just happened or whatever.
Yeah.
So had I pantsed less with those things, I think, but I also don't think they're that hard to fix.
Yeah.
Like I have one scene where like the characters have gone through just like a really traumatic, horror-filled experience. And I've got one character who's just like practically whistling, just like in a great mood. And honestly, that part was kind of intentional. I was like, I want this to be a moment of levity for him, and like he is thriving in this kind of apocalyptic setting.
Yeah.
But Jill was like, the it's too light, the tone is too light, and then it's something that I just need to address in a further edit. But not only was his tone light, everybody else was just kind of like acting like nothing had happened, even though they'd all gone through. So they weren't even talking about like monster tentacles or, zombie-like creatures or whatever. They're just kind of like, anyway, moving on.
And,
And I've noticed that in other books too. Like they don't always go through like and honestly, it's not particularly enjoyable to read traumatized characters reliving the trauma that went through. You kind of got to plug a way forward. But it needs to be reflected, I think, in the characters' actions. And
I'll say like having the spreadsheet and the scene breakdown, all sort of stuff does not take away from the overwhelmingness of the things you have to fix. Yeah, it doesn't.
The spreadsheet to me scares the crap out of me, dude.
The only thing it helps with is if there's the greatest advantage I have with it is if I'm reading a scene and I know there's a problem here, I can quickly know where that will have a trickle effect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, this character is doing this thing here. Oh, okay. I can look at further scenes down where they're involved and be like, okay, I got a note to reread this section to make sure it aligns with their choices and what's being revealed here.
Yep.
It's the only thing that's been helpful, which kind of reduces a little bit the overwhelmingness, but not much. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is unfair, but to compare it to other forms of art, whether it be painting or sculpture, right? Like maybe there are some people that create with a lot of structure and a spreadsheet, but I don't know. I feel like I'd much rather be throwing paint up there than planning to, right? I kind of want to go with a feeling in the moment and go with it. And yeah, maybe that does create more work in the long run when I'm kind of like refining, or maybe I have to cover up some mistakes and smudges and stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to process, for me, that's the enjoyment part for me. That's like where I am at my most happy.
Yeah.
So that's not to say I couldn't do some more planning, but the spreadsheet itself, I don't know. We talked about it before in our Panthers and Planners episode. It's just not enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
And honestly, maybe even overwhelming. Just the idea of like synthesizing everything into a really easy to. I love it for you to do it for my book. If you have,
I started to, but I was like, he's not going to. No. You got to. No,
I looked at it.
I'm not doing this for you.
You really? You're going to make a spreadsheet for me?
Yeah, I started to, and
not even Valentine's Day yet.
Kind of have like all my notes still. Where I can give you a quick break. I was highlighting POVs, locations, and everything for you.
Aw.
Yeah. But then I gave up on that because I wanted to get you the feedback.
Because I wouldn't appreciate you.
Yeah. And then you'd be like, not even going to look at it just out of spite.
I would definitely look at it. And maybe I'd even emulate it for the next one. But building it myself, I can't even imagine how to do that. My brain doesn't work that way yet.
Yeah. I think like you don't necessarily need it for like a first draft. I mean, that's just me. So it worked for me. But for the edit, I think it's been very helpful, like I said, because I can see if the editor went through, she made a comment somewhere, I could be like, oh, that scene, I know exactly where they pop up later on. This is where it is. Or I can quickly see it and just like make a note. Don't forget, they said this back in chapter blah, 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 make sure it shows up here. So I think during the revision process, it's been pretty helpful. But
I think I probably have a very naive perspective, or a naive like understanding of I think I know more about my book than I do. Right. So I'm like, oh, I can just, that's chapter 7. Like, but it's so big, right?
Yeah,
it's at the point now, it's like 118,000 words. So I can see where, having a spreadsheet to reference would be helpful in the editing process to go back to a certain section.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, I know where that is. I've memorized my book. I probably haven't, but.
No, I forgot about stuff that happened in my own book. And it's like, I'm down to 70,000 words.
I got words to spare. You want some?
Yeah,
we'll
I
cut
do.
A few chapters.
Yeah, I got
to add words based on your feedback.
I just want like an extra 5,000 to 10,000. That's all.
Oh, I got that. I got that for you. You give me a spreadsheet, I'll gift you 5,000 to 10,000
in the middle of my sci-fi thriller. And then there was tendrils that came out of the sewers. I was like, wait, where are we now?
No, I'll just give you some of my flashbacks.
Yes.
You want some childhood trauma? I got some to spare.
We time travel between 1977 and 2021. I say, so the other thing, so going through this, it took me a long time to get geared up when I got the content edit feedback. I know you didn't ask me a question, so I'm just going to talk.
I'm going to ask you a question. How about that content edit feedback? What's happening there?
Thanks, bud. I'll fix that in post. So I don't sound like a narcissist who just wants to talk about his own editing process.
No, you got to keep it.
I will say with the now I forgot what I was going to talk about. No, with the kind of overwhelming feeling with the content edit and something. So it took me a bit to get ramped up, and I was even having a hard time just finding the easy wins because. I mean, her feedback wasn't for this wasn't like fix this sentence, fix this line, although she did give me feedback of how to like.
So she didn't come in with, spelling corrects or grammar, punctuation. So, I mean, referring back to what we talked about earlier, it makes sense. Do the big pieces first. So it's content edit comes first, and then second comes that line edit. So anyway, sorry to interrupt. But.
No, that's right. But no, it's good. It's a good thing to call out because coming from getting a professional feedback, like she called out some stuff to say like, hey, this is how you could, here's an instance of where you could change this around a bit to make this a little more dynamic and feel better. And it was like more of a copy line edit. And then she gave me some feedback in the editorial letter saying like, here are things that you need to focus on. But good news is this is all fixable, and it happens a lot for first time, authors. So don't be overwhelmed with that. But the real focus was just on the big ticket items throughout the entire story. But it took me so long to ramp up. And I remember you and I talking, and I was just like, I don't know how to begin this thing. I've got the fucking spreadsheets. I got her feedback. I got all this stuff, and I just don't know where to go. And I talked to her about it, and she was just like, well, just pick one or two things, that you can at least grab onto, and you got a sense of how to fix it, and then fix those things. She's like, you should start big and work down small, but like grab something medium and grab something you can just at least fix because it'll get you going. And I got that, and I was like, all right. And then I started ramping up, and I was doing like from scene 1 all the way through, like top down, like going like scene by scene, which would make me jump around. So it was like, I get to scene 3, like I said, I was like, oh, this is going to change something in scene 54. Let me make sure I note that. And I'd jump down there and I'd fix that.
While referencing your spreadsheet while doing this, like knowing that, oh, interesting.
Yeah. So like when I'm editing, it's like I've got 2 screens, like right here is where the writing is. And then on my other screen is like the spreadsheet. So I can like kind of check where I am and like make sure I'm, things I revealed here, I make a note to say, make sure that's accounted for. Any questions I raised earlier on, making sure I account for that. But that's a lot of stuff that she also called out, like, hey, this question I don't think ever gets answered. Make sure it does if you introduce it, or change this around. But I guess what I'm really getting to with this, so this all feels very overwhelming, but getting going, I think I made a mistake of like, once I got going, I was in go mode, and I was just like, I think I spent like a week and a half, like 10-hour days straight through 12-hour days, just like cranking through. It's dark in here. All right, I got to eat dinner, and then, okay, I'm going to go play video games for a bit and go to bed, come back, start at like 8 a.m., go right through again. Right.
Yep.
And it was like, I feel so productive. And after a week and a half, I had only gotten through like the first act or so.
Oh shit.
And I was burned out. Yeah. I like completely burned myself out. And I was like, I don't want to fucking look at this thing for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was like, but I can't, I have to work on this thing. And I took off 3 days from it because my brain was just, I can't think anymore about this thing.
Yeah.
And I realized what I needed to do, and this is something I just noted to myself, was just like, this isn't a sprint. I needed to give myself like daily goals. And you know what? If you go a little bit past that, that's okay. But don't push it, because if you do, you'll freeze, and you'll just be like,
Russ, I was just thinking about this morning, right? So I went on like a morning run, and I always feel like there are some parallels between like running and exercise and writing. And weeks ago, because I was like sidelined by COVID, and then I started getting back into running, and I went so hard just to try to make up for lost time. I ended up hurting myself, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this as I was running today, like going slow, only going a few miles. This the comparison to writing, and how here I am coming into an editing process, and I was like, I probably need to not overdo it as I don't completely burn myself out and give up. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw it or heard it, but as you were talking, I really feel like I needed to hear you say what you said about starting with the big pieces, maybe not, overdoing it.
Yeah.
But I am having this like epiphany, this moment. I guess it's not an epiphany. All I'm doing is listening to your experience. But to not start with the grammar, and to not start with the misspellings, and to start with the big things, even though the big things right now are scary to me to jump into. And I want to get the little wins, to have some dopamine, to keep going. But I'm going to need to start with content. I just know I am. So then, did you have any tips? So how did you like moderate your, like when you got back into it after your 3-day hiatus, how'd you keep yourself from obsessing and overdoing it and putting in those 12-hour days again?
First step was don't beat yourself up about it. Because I took 40. I started working on book 2. I was so sick of this book. Like, I was texting you about that. I was like, the scenes I wrote, and you were like, oh, that's cool for this character. And I was like, wrong character, different book. I think you thought I was working on this one. I was like, no, I'm working on something else. Because I was I need to do something else. So I think,
interesting.
But yeah, so there's 4 days. Like, one, I just had a moment of like, stop beating yourself about you did this thing. Okay, how do I not do this again? And what did I do wrong? What I did wrong was I just was pounding on it, and I just burned myself out. Okay, how do I not do that? set
Is it
myself.
because you had a deadline? Is that why you were working? Like, were you panicked that you were running out of time for the next edit?
I think I was panicking because I was having like these starting problems, and I was like, I think that set a little bit of panic in. Originally, I was supposed to deliver this back to the editor for a copy line it in September 6th. And I had gave me like a 3-week, period. I got a little bit of work done on it. And I think I spent the first week just trying to come up with a plan and thinking of where do I start, right? And then I spent like maybe a week or so actually doing some work. And then I just got stuck again. I was just like, what am I don't know how to get going here. And I reached out to her and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna get this done. Like there's no way I can get this done in a week. So then we, moved schedules around and I had a month. So, but like coming back to it after doing that sprint run, this second time around, don't beat yourself up about it. See how you burned yourself out, but making sure that you're doing something every day for like, 5-6 days a week. But now I'm like, all right, how many words do I have left to go through? How many scenes do I have left to go through? What's my date that I want to get this done by? And setting like those daily goals and being like, okay, I need to do this much to get to this date. Is that going to kill me? Yeah. Doing 2 scenes or, setting an initial limit of like 4,000 words, get through 4,000 words of just, that's it was a good start. That's kind of where I'm sitting at.
And maybe we can talk about it in a future episode, but I feel like that taps into a little bit of work-life balance or writing life balance. Like you didn't have one. If you're writing 12 hours a day and you're like, oh, I didn't eat,
Yeah. Yeah. Glasses of water aren't going to cut it. No. But yeah, so I think just making sure like what I'm doing now is having like a goal that is reasonable, and won't burn my brain out. So the next day I keep that going.
Do you think?
I think that's the most important thing.
Your intention during that intense time period is the work that you did it move the needle forward? Or was it sacrificial? So like the hours you're putting in, you weren't spinning. You were still pushing it forward.
Oh yeah.
It's just that you ended up burning out because of it.
Yeah. I mean, it was, absolutely. Like, and no, it was definitely, it was good. And I feel so much like my opening acts, like it's even tighter now. And I feel like, I'm excited about this, rereading that. And it's like, I cut a lot of scenes and just kind of got to the action a bit quicker. And I was like, oh, this feels really good. I'm tightening up some plot holes here early on. And I'm like, I feel really, this is awesome. And I think maybe I was so excited I kept pushing myself, but what I should have done was just like, cool, you hit your goal for the day. Don't push any further because you're going to burn yourself out for the next day and so forth. Or you're going to keep cramming, using up all your energy. And then you hit a point where you're like, I need to recharge, and you take 4 days off, and then you kind of screw yourself where it's like,
right.
I should have just been easy picking away at this.
And honestly, like, even if that averages out to like to the same amount of hours, I think just like anything, right? It's the routine.
Yes.
So if you break a routine and then it's 1 day off, it's 2 days off, it gets really easy to make a new routine of not doing anything, of not sitting down, or something else replaces that, right? So it's not just to kind of an energy in, time average.
Yeah.
It's, if you break the routine, you potentially bring yourself to this moment of reflection of maybe you don't ever go back, know?
Yeah. And like you said,
like, you're dedicated to it, but I mean, there's always, at least for me, there's always that question that creeps in. Like, do I stop now? Like, is this, maybe I do something else with my time.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of make sure that, you protect yourself from those moments. And I think overdoing it leads to more of that question.
100%. And coming back to like some of you had said when you're running, your analogy there is fantastic because it is so true. And I think if you miss a day or two, don't take day 3 to do 3 days of writing. Yeah. Don't do that. Yep. That is like, because I did that. I did that a couple of times where I missed a day and I was like, that's right. I can do 8,000 and get through. I need to do 3 scenes.
You have all this makeup, right?
Yeah. Don't do that. Just get right back into the goal you've set for yourself in a day that, is reasonable. It's 2 hours, 4 hours, 3 scenes, a chapter, or 4,000 words or whatever that is reasonable. Just pick that back up and do that because I think and I did this to myself too, where I'll make it up or I'll make it up tomorrow or whatever. That burns yourself out because then you're like, I've got so much to do now. And then you're like, I don't know if I can get through this. And it's like, you only get through half of that. And then it's like, oh, then tomorrow I'm going to make up a till or two. And all of a sudden it's a snowball effect. And then
right. And then you're writing from this kind of, and I can speak to this because right now I feel like in many aspects of my life, I feel like I'm under delivering. I feel like I'm just drowning a little bit. But when I was running, there was one day that I went out, I ran 4 miles, and then I was like, I feel good, and I didn't run yesterday. I'm gonna run 4 more, and I went out and I ran 4 more, and I hurt my back and my leg, and I couldn't run for like the next 2 weeks. So instead, I drank. Because it's like, I deserve it. I hurt myself. I can't do this. Whatever. And, I just don't want that to happen with writing. And one of the scary things right now with writing for me and editing is that having sent the betas off and waiting patiently for your feedback, which you turned around promptly, thank you, is that I actually didn't use that time to work on anything else. Obviously I didn't look at this book and I didn't work on any of the other side things that I have. I read a little, but mostly it's been kind of a time period that I didn't use to write. And it's hard to get my brain back into it. And in retrospect, I wish I had done a little something each day to keep the routine.
Yeah. I think that's very important. Even when I send this off to the editor, she's going to have it for 2 weeks to copy line in it. Like I'm thinking ahead of like, okay, how am I planning that time? I mean, I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling for a portion of it just to clear the brain. But then I'm going to spend like the week when I get back, like, all right, I'm going to try and write just 1,000 words a day. And then I got to spend the rest of the time doing like marketing things because now I'm going to be like,
grown.
Yeah. I got to start planning that stuff and the stuff I got to think about, and it's like, well, this is the time for me to do that because when I get this back, it's going to be another month of me, doing this marathon of my 4,000 words a day or whatever my goal is every day and just keep
4,000 is huge.
Yeah, but I think like during an edit, I think it's like I try to aim for like brand new, like fresh writing. It's like I try to do 2,000 a day, and I think 4,000 is a good like barometer. But that's me.
Russ, take me through your like the professional editing process. So is this right? So it goes content first for the most part, then it goes line edit, which includes like grammar and spelling and
copy line
punctuation,
is like,
stuff like that.
Like what they call like, that's like kind of fixing the craft stuff that, the basics and like, sentence structure.
But then after that, there's a proofreading one. What's different between the line edit and the proofreading?
Proofread, I think is mostly just now looking for typos and, maybe typos, maybe missing periods or quotations and stuff like that. That's like the final
and that's not in the line edit.
No. Copy line edit is like...
Sounds like a scam.
I'll let you know.
I'm just joking.
I'll let you know.
Can you pay somebody to do it for you?
Well, let's see. You say it's a scam, but now you think about this. I'm joking. I'm not calling you out here, but like, think about the number.
No, I said it was a scam.
Yeah, you said it's a scam. No, but think about the number of revisions each of us have done to our own books and then sent it out to someone, and how it still was, right? Like,
yeah.
Like I did 4 revisions before I sent it to a professional editor. And that's like getting beta reader feedback from like 8 people over 2 rounds. After edits I did again. It's like, I'm still missing stuff. So it's just narrowing that, lowering and lowering every single time. You're just cutting through all the mistakes as much as you can. So it's like, you can't aim for a perfectionist mindset when doing revisions. It's impossible. And you just have to I'm going to get this to the state that I feel good about it. And then move on to the next step. And then it's going to make it better. And so I get it to the next best state and then, next process. So,
I mean, I'll tell you, it's rare for even like books on my shelf. I come across errors. I won't say all the time, but pretty consistently.
Right. Like, absolutely. I've been the last 3 or 4 books I've read, I've definitely come across like 2 or 3 errors, and these are professional.
Yeah. I'm just curious to hear like about when you get to that line edit. I'd like to talk about that a little bit because it's hard for me to picture the difference between that and the proofing, I guess. Proofing is just kind of a final polish.
Yeah. Yeah. That's literally just looking for those typos and the missing periods and some grammar stuff maybe that the copy line edit missed. But copy line, I think, also focuses more on like the flow of the words too.
So Russ, I haven't been through the process yet, but how did you go about like finding and choosing an editor, vetting an editor, making sure that you found somebody that you would have a good working relationship? Because it seems like you've got a great like rapport with your editor right now, and that could have gone almost feels like choosing a therapist or something. Like you can get a bad one,
Yeah.
and you need to keep kind of hunting until you get a good one. What was your process?
That's a fantastic question, Tim. No, I had no idea what to do. So I, again, just a lot of research. There's a lot of writers' blogs out there you can follow. Some that kind of pop off the top of my head are like janefriedman.com. She's a fantastic resource for everything about writing. Writershelpingwriters.net. That's a great one too. Just resource of like guest posts of like editing and writing and character, everything you need. So those are like two. I can share some in the when we post this up, some other links that I follow, but just following a bunch of writers' blogs that are like, industry kind of leading people. There's also services out there. There's like another blog, which is a pretty good one, like Readsy. I'm not sure if you heard that one. There's a couple services you can find that like will help you.
I just wait for you to read the blogs and then just give me the clip notes.
Yeah, I know. You're making me do all the research.
You're doing it anyway.
God damn it.
This is trickle down.
Yeah. So there are services out there like, so Readsy is actually a good resource for just general writing tips and learning how to do things, but they also, that their catch is that, you can sign up for them and they've got a curated group of like editors. From what I hear, it's like a pretty tough group to get like certified and get into for editors.
Do they pay into it to get featured?
I don't
like Psychology Today to keep the therapist thing going.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you as an author, you would pay for their service and be like, hey, here's my $50.
I'm just curious if the editors pay a subscription to be visible on these sites.
I don't know, actually. Don't know.
Anyway.
I'm not sure.
I'm always dubious,
I know you are, which is good. Actually, the one I did use was the EFA, the Editorial Freelancers Association. It's like any other, like the Fiverr or whatever it is. Like it's almost like LinkedIn too. It's like just a listing of editors, and it's just like that's all it is. It's very niche, so it's just editors. So you can find proofreaders there, content editors who do everything. It's huge. It's a little overwhelming, but you can narrow it down based on like location, genre, location. So that was actually, I would say, the majority of editors. I had a list of like 30 editors from guest blog posts I read that I was like, oh, I like their kind of thought process here. And then I'd follow up from like the blog post. So like an editor would have written on janefriedman.com or one of these blogs, and I would like go find their Twitter, go find their homepage and look at their services and be like, okay, this one looks like it might work. So throw them in the list, throw them in a spreadsheet, because of course I have a spreadsheet for this.
Yo, send me that spreadsheet so I don't have to do any of this work.
No, but the EFA is actually pretty great. So it's the-efa.org. And I probably pulled like half the list I curated was from them, just like searching and looking at their websites and seeing what they do. And then from there, it was just like, okay, I get this list of 30. Let me go through pricing. Like that's important for me. Like I have a budget set for how much I'm going to spend to get this book produced. And I want to go through the 3 rounds. So between content, copy line, and proofreading, what's that going to cost on average, right? So
is it a la carte? Like you could have just chosen one of those things. You didn't need to choose all 3.
Yeah, most editors you'll find their services will be like, hey, I do content, I do copy line, I do proof. Some will just be like, I just do content. Some do copy line and proof. So you just got to look at their websites, and then the pricing will be usually in a sense. And yeah, if you're paying more, sometimes there's a connection to quality. I don't know yet because I've only been using one editor, but if you do look up like the editors for like the Andy Weirs or like the bestsellers, like you can go find them and you can see what they charge. We're not talking about Andy Weir. Don't.
No, all positives. Props to everybody who's writing.
Yeah, that's right.
Except Andy Weir.
So so then like this list of 30, I did like a pricing. Okay, who fits within my budget? And then it's important knowing what you're looking for. Like, do you need a content edit? Sometimes you can feel pretty comfortable with your story and your plot just based on beta readers. I wanted to go content edit. I wanted to go through this entire process. I knew I was going to do copy.
Your content edit, right, was super valuable.
I'm
stuff
glad
that you would have
it.
completely. Yeah. You didn't get that feedback from any round of your beta.
Nope.
Right. So it was certainly worth the time and money that you spent.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But then like choosing, pricing. Then I
Like paying for more work. I'm like, do I want to hire somebody to tell me to do more things?
Do I want to pay someone to make me overwhelmed and stressed?
You know what's sad is that I think that's why I want a query. I just want other people to worry about all these parts.
I don't know if it's that easy though. I think you still got to make the changes. Like they're not just going to do it for you.
Yeah, but the research, finding people, can't they just they'll provide them for you, right?
I'm basically providing you a list. So that work is already done. We've established that.
Can you make a tab for horror?
God damn it, you jerk. Oh, actually, you need to be careful because there's a lot of people who say I don't do horror pretty specifically. So that is a thing. So
I'll call it sci-fi.
Not wrong. But yeah, then like other factors like
they don't do horror. I want to pull on that thread a little bit. What's up with that? Is it like
I think it's
the
just
lowest form?
No.
It's like I do everything. I do westerns. I do superhero movies.
Relax. Let me finish. No, there's some authors who are editors who don't do sci-fi. They don't do thrillers. Like they focus on romance or they're specifically just sci-fi. Like everyone has their own choices, but you need to like that's
maybe
something to pay attention to.
They just don't enjoy. Okay. Oh, yeah. I can understand. I can respect that.
Yeah. So then like the other things were availability too. So like I had the list of 30, narrowed it down by pricing, kind of reached out to a few of them. Some people didn't get back to me right away. Some got back to me like really quickly, which I was like, okay, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Sample edits. That was a huge thing. Sent a sample edit to like when I got it down to like 5 or 6.
Are they able to say like who they've worked with? Like, did you research, other self-published or published authors just to see? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely part of it was one, looking at authors that I've read, either self-published or, not as big as like the Kings and the Weers and everyone else. But finding all those editors, like looking at their acknowledgements and like you can find them, right? And then going to their website and seeing what they've done. But even this list that I pulled, most of them had like testimonials, which are one thing, but then they had like their list of books they've worked on. So, okay, cool. Let me go look at that book and see a sample and does it fit my genre? Is it how focused are they on this? Or are they just doing all of the books? Like, do they do thrillers and horror and everything else? Or are they focused on sci-fi thrillers? So they have like a little more of a base knowledge of those genre expectations. So yeah. And then genre focus, which we talked about, like that's kind of a big one. There was a lot of people who I came across who were like, I don't do sci-fi or thrillers. And I was like, okay.
Yep.
You're off my list.
Cross that one out.
But yeah. So that was pretty much it. I don't know. Just a lot of
research.
Yeah, which I've done.
I mean, I want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing all that research for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. And then, honestly, the sample edit was the biggest thing. I had gotten it down to 5 people, and
so they provided 5. Like, so you got 5 separate sample edits on the same. You submitted the same text.
Yep,
the same section of your book.
Yeah, some will have limits. Some will be like, send me the first 1,500 words, send me the first chapter or 2, or send me your best chapter. Blah blah blah. I sent them all the same thing because I wanted to compare them. So I sent everyone.
That's interesting.
The first 2 chapters and just let them go as far. Like if they just went to 1,500 words, I was like, that's fine. I was just like, hey, there's the package I'm putting together. Like just send me back what you'll do. And then I did like a side by side comparison. There was one editor. She was fantastic, and it was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think I showed you this one, but like the research she put in for just the sample edit, and I was like, oh my God. She's like, I am extremely thorough. And I was like, I love this. And she had like links to things about comments. So like, hey, this is why I think this, and this is why I've chosen to do this for a line edit, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, holy shit. But then you find a happy medium. And if you can chat with someone over Zoom, that's great too. But then I also came down to like availability. That was kind of a part of it. Like there was, of the 5, 3 of them were like, yeah, I can't take this until like the end of this year. And I was like, I'm not going to sit around for 6. I can't sit around for 5 months.
Yeah.
Starting a second book. Like I can't do that. Like I need
How different were the edits that were submitted? Were they like, did some of them, was there repeats? Did some of them have similar comments, or were they completely disparate?
No, I think for the most part, they were all within range.
Yeah.
The comments, it was interesting. Some provided like a mix of copy and content edit, and some people had different opinions on like, how maybe something should play out or why something, didn't work, but for the most part, they all kind of called out somewhat the same things.
Stuff.
Yeah. Which I thought was fascinating. So book the editor, and then you got a ticking clock. Then you got that, third act timer going off to get you moving. So,
yeah. So you're rounding the content edit. No, you're finishing the content. You're moving to the line.
Yeah. My plan is to get this big picture stuff done in the next week and a half, which I should do because I've set myself a reasonable daily goal, not overwhelm myself.
Nice.
I'm going to take a day off of it, drink pretty heavily. I don't suggest everyone do that, but I'm going to do that. And I'm going to take 2 days and I'm going to just read it. I haven't read this book from first word to first chapter, last chapter in a while. So I'm just going to read it from top down. And then I'm going to spend a week doing as best as my skill level, like cleaning up like sentence stuff, catching all like the poorly done dialogue tags and formatting and stuff. So that eliminates.
Well, why would you do that if you're going to submit it for
one less thing that she's got to focus on? Like I want to fix that stuff because she will still provide like, she's still going to call out like plot and story stuff while she's going through. So I don't want her getting.
But it doesn't affect cost, right? Are you just being cordial?
It's not cordial. No, I just want to get her the best product. So because I guess it's more of like, yeah, she's going to still do this copy line edit. But I don't want her to have to focus on like basic like comma stuff or dialogue tag stuff that I should know. You know, that's like,
okay,
this is obvious stuff. Like I should know this and have that done so she can focus more on like structuring the sentences and fixing those for like,
as a sensitive artist, I'm offended that you said that dialogue tags are something I should know.
I don't know what you're talking about then. And who knows if I'm even right? It's just something that stood out to me because it's something I was been focusing on. So
yeah, but I think consistency is key, right? So I was going with what sounds best.
I don't know. I think that was a good chat about editing, the editing process, and where we're at, and how terrified we are, and
yeah, thanks for all of the
how fucking painful this is.
Yeah, thanks for the resources you put together for me again. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. I'm glad I could do that.
I'm glad you're the first one to run through this cornfield because it's
naked.
I see the path.
I'm running through this cornfield naked right now.
No, good episode. And honestly, this was very similar to one of our non-recorded writers chats for me. Yeah. I think you helped a lot, so thanks, Russ. You helped me because I'll start with content and then I'll move into a line edit, and I'll try not to run myself into the ground.
Don't do it. Just pick yourself, set that goal. All right, well, that's our episode. Thanks everyone for listening. If you enjoyed the episode and you think someone else might like it, let them know. If you have any topic ideas or feedback, find us on Twitter at writer_syndrome. Or head over to writersyndrome.com for all of our episodes, contact info there. Beautiful photos of our faces there too. Website links, all sorts of cool stuff. Otherwise, join us next episode where we'll discuss art-life balance.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I don't have that right now.
We might as well just retitle it. We'll discuss the topic stress.
Yeah.
So
drama.
Yeah. Well, until then, until next time, keep writing.